When they exchanged brief pleasantries after the game, it looked like Bowie wanted to hang around and talk for a bit, but Jordan pretty much brushed him off after a couple of quick words and then walked to the locker rooms. Not sure if there's anything really reading into that, but there you go.
I think that you're drawing along Bowie on that one, mate.
Michael might have been saying play it again, Sam. Who knows? Anyhow, let's move on, mate.
I always like to say that Michael got to play with me for a year at North Carolina. I think it really helped him.
Spectacular player from the beginning.
You can see right away Jordan was going to be a big-time scorer.
And showed what an impact he was going to have on the league.
This is NB 85, celebrating the 30-year anniversary of Michael Jordan's rookie season in the NBA. And now, your hosts, Adam Ryan and Aaron Steen.
Welcome back, Aaron, for episode 13 of NB 85. We're at it again, mate. How are you today?
Good, mate. The Ford Recording Studios await the recording of episode 13.
You're in the car again, putting in the hard yards, so thanks very much. If you're new to the show, thanks for joining us, and if you're one of our regular listeners, welcome back as always.
I'm actually quite disappointed that no one's made mention of the fact or given me any props at all that I record half these that I record half these episodes in my car.
Hopefully one of our ardent fans here, mate, might drop you a line and thank you for your efforts in the recording studio.
I do give Ford a lot of credit there. Soundproofing is excellent.
Right. Today, mate, we'll be chatting about two of the Chicago Bulls games from late November in 84.
Chicago versus Portland, November 24th, 1984.
At Memorial Coliseum in Portland, Oregon. And we covered this game briefly in episode 12 of the series. And also we covered the second game that we'll be chatting about later today in that same episode 12. But we'll be delving in much deeper today to break them down as we've been able to allegedly obtain DVD copies of said games. This game is a Blazers TV coverage, and it was via a Blazers Classics rebroadcast that was hosted by Eddie Doucette, who is a name that I'm sure most fans of the podcast would be familiar with.
Eddie Doucette was the play-by-play man for the Milwaukee Bucks for 16 years before spending time with the Indiana Pacers, San Diego Clippers, Denver Nuggets, and now, of course, the Portland Trailblazers. Eddie
Doucette also coined the term skyhook, from what I understand, in reference to the captain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So that's another little bit of random factoid for you there, mate.
That's a wonderful tidbit. Did not know that, Adam.
No, either did I until I started to research a little bit about him. And I think he was also involved in the Basketball Hall of Fame year that Jordan was inducted into the Hoop Hall as well. Chicago coached, as always, throughout this 85 season by Kevin Lockery. Portland were led by the late, great Dr. Jack Ramsey, who led Portland to their sole NBA championship in 1977. The commentators for the game were Larry Steele, who I've subsequently learnt spent 9 seasons with Portland. In 1974, he also led the NBA in steals, which is appropriate given his surname, and he was also on the NBA champion Blazers team in 1977. And the other commentator is Steve Snapper Jones.
Otherwise known as Steve Cyber Snapper Jones, as Marv Albert called him during the 1997 NBA Finals when he was live chatting with fans over the fancy new gadget called the Internet. I absolutely loved hearing Steve Jones's voice on the call of this game, and it brought back memories of a 1992 game of the Chicago Bulls at the Philadelphia 76ers. I'm not sure if you recall this game, Adam. Steve Jones was one of the commentators, and it was the game in which Horace Grant accidentally elbowed Charles Barkley in the top of the head.
No, I actually don't remember this game. What actually unfolded?
Charles Barkley threw a pump fake directly under the hoop, and Horace bit on the pump fake, jumped, and on his way down, he brought his elbows in so he didn't hit Charles, but he couldn't bring them in far enough to avoid making contact with the crown of Barkley's head, and actually didn't quite knock him unconscious, but Charles ended up spending at least a quarter or two in the locker rooms.
Okay, I don't actually recall that. I've probably likely seen the highlight in my time, but don't actually remember it. So good call there, mate. I know one other time, though, I did see Barkley get knocked down courtesy of a Bill Cartwright errant elbow on a slam dunk at New York some years prior.
He wasn't Robinson Crusoe in being almost knocked out by a Bill Cartwright elbow. I'm actually a bit surprised that you can't recall that game that I mentioned, Chicago at Philly in 92. It was one of the games broadcast on Channel 10 here in Australia.
Every chance I've actually seen it, mate, but I've completely forgotten about it. I need to rewatch that one clearly. One of the many games and many moments of things that we could probably chat about in future episodes of In All Airness. There's no lack of NBA history and events that have happened that are worth chatting about.
I was going to bring it up in the NB 92 episode, one of the episodes of NB 92, but I thought it was too good to have to wait for another 7 years.
Oh, yeah, I'm really excited for 2022 when we get to that season. Now, a random stat to come from this game as well. Looking back to the 1984 NBA season briefly, Chicago took on Portland on 2 occasions, and the Bulls were 1-point winners on each of those games. In the second of those meetings, it was a 4-overtime affair. The Bulls won 156-155. Pretty sure it was on the back of Enos Watley / Enes Watley. I don't think I've called him Enos the entire series, hitting a key 3-point play to steal the victory for the Bulls. This was the first pro meeting between Michael Jordan and Sam Bowie. It was Sam's first game in 11 days. He was suffering a variety of ailments, including a sprained ankle, and he also endured a cracked rib in pre-season play as well. So he wasn't off to a great start in his rookie campaign. By contrast, Jordan was lighting up the league at a rate of knots.
Knowing some of the graphic nature of the leg injuries that Sam Bowie suffered during his early career, I almost had a bit of a nauseous feeling in my stomach seeing him jump around or run around on the court. I knew that he didn't injure himself in this game, but it didn't stop me from just having it in the back of my head what had happened to him earlier on in his career.
There was certainly glimpses of incredible athleticism and what he was well known for when he played at Kentucky and starred for them, even though his career at Kentucky was a couple of years longer than it should have been, given the fact he also suffered those leg-related issues in his college career as well. But he could certainly get up there still and sky to the basket and had a couple of big dunks in this game too.
The Trailblazers at this time were a great offensive team with 3 players, Michael Thompson, Kiki Vandeweghe and Jim Paxson, who were all over 20 points per game on the season, and also had Clyde Drexler, the runner-up in the 1985 Six-Man Award, coming off the bench with 15 points per game.
Yeah, and of course, MJ and Barkley, that's a good start. MJ and Drexler would go head-to-head in the 1992 NBA Finals. Clyde had the first taste of NBA Finals action in 1990 against the Pistons, but did not get over the hill against the Pistons on the end of their back-to-back run.
The 1992 Finals, which I'll be also bringing up a little bit later on in the...
in 7 years' time.
...episode, Adam. In 7 years' time, no, a little bit later on in the episode.
Oh, okay, very good.
MJ's first score of the game was a hanging off-balance 16-footer with Jim Paxson hanging all over him. His next score was actually a no score as he stepped out of bounds on the play, but completed an amazing up and under that in the end didn't count. He then scored on a fadeaway 14-footer, again with Jim Paxson hanging all over him. The Blazers got off to a really fast start in this game and had the score at 18-9 early on. There was a shot during a timeout of the game of a much younger former Bull, Rick Adelman, who was an assistant to Jack Ramsey at this stage.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool to see him on the sidelines there as an apprentice in waiting pretty much, because obviously you go on to have a very good NBA coaching career as well as a head coach. But it was great to see him there on the sidelines.
Michael Thompson was great early on for Portland in this game, and you can see why he was such a big pickup for the LA Lakers in the 87 season on their way to the title that year. Clyde Drexler and rookie Sam Bowie checked in at the 5-minute mark for the Blazers and got a really nice applause from the Portland crowd.
Yeah, I noticed that, and I wasn't entirely sure if they were cheering for Drexler entering the game or the fact that they still had high hopes for Sam Bowie. Hopefully a bit of both.
Yeah, a bit of both, I would have thought. At the 4:45 mark of the first quarter, the Bulls got out on the break. Enes Watley passed to MJ on the break. MJ takes one dribble from the three-point line, jumps with the ball in his right hand, gets met by Kenny Carr at the rim, who is jumping past him, switches side with the ball midair to the other side of his body, and then finishes back with the right hand on the other side of the hoop. Without question, one of Mike's more underrated moves in his career, as it's never one that you see in his highlight packages.
Yeah, this one, for whatever reason, just does not show up hardly ever on highlight reels. And I think he also went around Michael Thompson at the same time with that move. I could be wrong there, but certainly agree that it's one of his most underrated and almost never shown moves. It was incredible. He actually leaped from outside the line markings on the key and ended up on the opposite side of the basket. So a crazy move, and they replayed it a couple of times and talked about Jordan's athleticism right there and then too.
And then to reward him for this amazing play, he got benched by Kevin Lockery for Quinton Daly soon after that basket, to the bewilderment of both myself and the commentators.
Yeah, they did make mention of the fact that it was strange that he just started to light things up and then Lockery sat him down.
It took Quinton Daly exactly 3 seconds to put up his first shot of the game, which was a made basket from about the foul line, which was finished at the other end by a massive two-handed facial by Michael Thompson on Orlando Woolridge.
Yeah, he served up an absolute treat on that dunk. There was a couple of massive dunks in this game.
There really was.
Yeah.
On the next offensive play for the Trailblazers, it was a Clyde Drexler steal, a fast break, and a gliding and one finish with a foul on Caldwell Jones. It was a textbook glide. The score at this point in time, with 3:04 remaining in the first quarter, was 25-19 Portland Trailblazers. Every opportunity that we get to mention any future present or previous Bulls, we'll all going to mention in the podcast. Future Bull Steve Coulter checked in late in the first quarter, and it was kind of hard to tell him and Clyde Drexler apart due to the matching bouffant hairdos that they were sporting at the time.
I'm not going to let slide the fact that you've said bouffant for the second time in this series. You mentioned it in relation to Larry Legend.
Larry Pace.
In one of the earlier episodes of this series too. And quickly speaking of Steve Coulter, he played 27 games with the Bulls in the 1987 season. And in this game, he scored 8 points on 3 of 6 shooting from the field.
Orlando Woolridge had an awesome one-handed power dunk with the left hand with just over a minute to go, showing his amazing athleticism. And Quinton Daly was great with 8 points in the first quarter after he checked in for MJ. The last score of the quarter was a Daly runner over 3 Portland Trailblazer defenders. And at the end of the first quarter, the score was 34-27 in favour of Portland. The top scorers for that first quarter, Michael Thompson of the Blazers with 10, Kiki Vandeweghe had 9, and for the Bulls, Quinton Daly 8, Orlando had 7, and MJ had 6.
Yeah, a pretty exciting and entertaining first quarter, and quite high scoring as well, which would continue for a majority of the game. In the second quarter, MJ re-entered the game to begin, and on the Bulls' first possession, Dave Corzine, fan favourite, podcast favourite, world favourite, hit MJ on a cross-court pass, and Jordan knocked down a 17-foot jumper, and that brought the Bulls to within 5 points. On the next play, Sam Bowie skied for one of those aforementioned big jams. After being called for travelling, Dave Corzine then hit on consecutive baskets, which led to a Blazers timeout. They were up by 7 points at that stage. And I wanted to make mention briefly about Jim Paxson discounting his rookie season when he only played 17 minutes a game. From 1981 through 85, so this season inclusive, he averaged 19.4 points, 3.4 assists, and 1.6 steals. Now, the Sixth Man of the Year award didn't get introduced until 1983, but in 1981, Paxson averaged 17 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 steals in 79 games, all of which were off the bench. So a phenomenal effort, and definitely would have been a contender had the award existed a few years prior.
In hindsight, it may have even been called the Jim Paxson Memorial Sixth Man of the Year Award.
He lit it up.
Yeah, he had that locked down, definitely.
He did, and in this game, he would put on an absolute show, and we'll get to some of his stat lines as we progress through this recap. Now, MJ then posted up Drexler on the baseline, and Clyde fouled Jordan. He hit both free throws, which gave MJ 10 points for the game, but the Blazers still held an 8-point lead. Jack Ramsey then got teed up for arguing a foul call on Drexler. Jack Ramsey thought it was all ball. The referees disagreed, and then Quinton Daly stepped up to the line and hit the technical free throw. A little while later, MJ was on the left wing. He drove middle and hit a very tough hanging jumper in the lane. And with less than 5 minutes to go in the quarter, Steve Johnson threw down another monster dunk, a game that was littered with monster jams, right over Sam Bowie. Still, Portland held a 6-point lead at this stage. Now, I'm sure you remember this play from the quarter, mate. Jordan rejected Michael Thompson, and then that led to an Orlando Woolridge throwdown at the other end. So a 12-point lead had then been cut down to 4. Portland were only up 58-54.
I enjoy calling breakout games by Chicago Bulls players as jersey games, as in you enjoy watching them break out in that game so much that you want to go and get one of their jerseys. Well, Orlando's 84-85 season was a jersey season for me, and I'm looking forward to picking up one of his jerseys.
Yeah, it was fantastic, and it was one of Jordan's patented blocks too, where he reaches from behind the player who's about to shoot the ball, and then it went straight to Woolridge's hands, and the rest was history. Wes Matthews hit an 18-footer a little later on in the quarter, which tied the game at 58, and the Bulls were on a great run, 18-6. Then Kiki Vanderway connected on a 20-footer and was fouled by Orlando Woolridge and made the extra free throw. Vanderway, it's worth mentioning, was an all-star with Denver the previous 2 seasons, 83 and 84. And in the 84 season, he averaged a very impressive 29.1 points, 4.8 rebounds, and 3.1 assists. Then in June of 84, Denver traded him to Portland for Fat Lever and Calvin Nat and Wayne Cooper, plus a future draft pick. But any chance we've got, mate, to make mention of Lafayette Fat Lever is a good one.
Lafayette Lever was the starting point guard on the NBA 85 all-favourite squad. I believe Dave Corzine was the starting centre on that team.
Yeah, we've already locked down 2 positions for sure. Jordan will have to be the starting off guard. So we're just going to get 2 more to lock in, mate, and then we'll have our starting 5. I'm sure we'll get there by the time this series is over. An alley-oop lob pass to MJ didn't come off. However, Orlando Woolridge was there to clean up the crumbs, and he went up with another strong jam. Sam Bowie puts back a miss with just 2 seconds left in the half, and Portland were 4-point leaders as they went into the locker rooms.
Moving on to the third quarter, MJ's first score was a fadeaway from the foul line. The very next play, he gambled on a steal, leaving Jim Paxson open at the baseline, who made the shot. Jim Paxson was a very crafty offensive player as a 2-time All-Star in 83 and 84 for the Blazers, Adam.
This game is a great showcase for how good of a player Jim Paxson was back in the early to mid-80s. He put on an absolute clinic here, and he hit on a number of really clever moves, had some great passes, and he got a few oohs and ahs from the crowd as well as he dished off some of those assists.
On the next play, MJ received the pass on the left wing and went baseline on Jim Paxson. He was then met at the hoop by a car who was parked in the lane. And completed a nifty and one layup off the glass, exhibiting his beautiful body control.
Yeah, I took a few seconds to cotton on to that little pun there, mate, but well played.
Rookie Jerome Kersey checked into the game in this quarter. Jerome really stuck it to the Bulls in Game 6 of the 1992 NBA Finals in the first half, as I'm sure that you'll remember, mate.
Yeah, he was a great player for Portland over the course of his Blazers days, and even back at this stage as a rook, you could see how clearly he was well built and just suited to play a tough style of game, which he was known for his whole career.
He was definitely a favourite of mine, and I'm sure that you'll remember the other piece of commentary, Mercy, Mercy, Jerome Kersey. Just to mix it up, a great defensive play then ensued. It was a 3-on-1 Portland break with the only Wes Matthews back. Clyde Drexler had the ball with undoubtedly the intent to dunk the ball on Wes, but the harassing Wes Matthews rushed Clyde into overshooting the hoop on the dunk attempt.
Wes Matthews did very well there, given it was a 3-on-1, and he obviously wasn't the tallest of guys going around either.
After this, MJ checked back in and immediately blocked Jerome Kersey from behind.
It's worth noting the fact that Jordan was a really good off-ball defender, given that the fact, I suppose, he came from behind again to help out on D and get those blocks, but that was a stock standard move that he pretty much pulled off throughout his entire career. He was a very good help defender.
And if you watch these games from his rookie season, the amount of times that he attempted these from behind blocks, if he had actually succeeded on all of them, he would have averaged about 17 blocks per game during his rookie season. The Blazers at this point were up 92-81 with just over 3 minutes remaining and were shooting 75% in the quarter to extend their lead on the Bulls. They had a 4-point lead at the half. An extraordinary play by the Blazers came up next with Darnell Valentine hitting Jerome Kersey on the baseline with a pass. Kersey was wide open to dunk the ball, but he went up two-handed and jammed the ball onto the front of the hoop, essentially blocking his own shot. He then recovered by drawing a foul from Dave Corzine and making a layup for the three-point opportunity, but Jerome definitely missed on a golden opportunity.
He would have been Kersey-ing himself at the miss. Yeah, but it wasn't like he actually jumped from too far out either. He just mistimed. He was close to the basket, but he followed up and eventually got the points anyhow. Jerome Kersey, after that three-point play, that gave Portland their largest lead of the game to that point. It was 96-82, and there was about 2.5 minutes remaining in the third quarter.
And then a little later on, the Blazers actually extended their lead out to 20 off a Steve Coulter layup, who then stole the Bulls' inbound pass after the lay-in that led to a Clyde Drexler jump shot. So they were starting to blow the lead out a little bit at this point in time. The Bulls' offense had really broken down at this point, and they couldn't get anything flowing at all on the offensive end. With 28 seconds remaining, MJ caught a court-length pass from Steve Johnson off a Clyde Drexler miss, and MJ glided in on the Buffon twins for an and one layup. This gave MJ 24 points and brought the lead back to 17 points.
You worked it in really nicely with a MJ glided, referencing Drexler, and then got the Buffon mention as well, mate. So 2 thumbs up.
That's at least one person that notices. The next Portland possession was a spectacular one. Jerome Kersey saved the ball in bounds in the corner to Drexler, who was under the hoop. Clyde then threw a hook pass to a streaking Sam Bowie, who threw down a monster two-hand hammer dunk on Steve Johnson.
I said initially the game had a few big-time dunks. It actually was littered with a massive array of monster dunks, and this was, of course, one of them. After 3 quarters, the Bulls actually were down 106-89, and Jim Paxson had 25 points already to this stage. Clyde Drexler had 15. For the Bulls, MJ had 24, Woolridge had 19, and Quentin Daly had 13. Into the fourth quarter, Kevin Lockery got teed up pretty quickly. He was being very patronising to referee Tommy Nunes, and they showed a close-up of Lockery while he was chatting to Nunes, who was off camera at this stage, but I'm sure you saw it. He just sort of mouthed something like, "Oh, okay." It was being, very patronising, as I mentioned, and he got teed up very quickly, and the crowd loved it.
The first and only time I've ever seen anyone teed up for patronising.
It was just a really mild-mannered, "Oh, okay," and yeah, it was in total sarcasm, basically, and he got teed up very quickly thereafter. Kiki Vandeweghe was on the left wing early in this fourth quarter. He drove baseline, left-handed, and threw down another great dunk. And Jordan was right there at the rim to meet him as well, and that put Portland up by 18 points. So the Bulls were in a lot of strife at this stage. They were really ST-ruggling. And then there was another lefty drive shortly thereafter by Kiki, and that kept Portland ahead by 15 points. MJ then looped a pass over the top to Dave Corzine down low, and then he scored off glass. That was 14 points for Corzine at the time. And then he'd also follow with a 17-foot rainbow.
And again, showing how well Dave Corzine played on the road as opposed to the issues he was having playing at Chicago Stadium.
He probably relished the fact that he was not inside the confines of Chicago Stadium, and Corzine continued his great form here. He hit another bucket. This time it was in close to the hoop, gave him 6 points for the quarter, and the Bulls were within 13 points with about 7 minutes to go. Quentin Daly scored 2 points, gave him 19 for the game on a nifty little drive to the hoop. MJ missed on a gorgeous drive and layup attempt. He gathered a loose ball and slammed it home. Not long after that, Steve Jones chimed in with one of my favourite comments of the entire game. He said, "Vandeweghe having one of those very quiet 30-point evenings." And as he said that, the Blazers were still holding on to a commanding 14-point lead. With just over 3 minutes to go in the contest, Quentin Daly had a very tough layup, which brought the Bulls back to within 10 points. MJ then stole the ball in the backcourt, and he had a great chance to get the lead down to single digits, but was rejected at the rim by Sam Bowie. So that was a very impressive play, a very athletic play from Bowie, who I'm sure would have been happy to reject MJ given all the hype surrounding Jordan and the fact that he'd been ridiculed basically for the Blazers picking him ahead of MJ. The closest that Chicago got was within 7 points. It was 134-127 with just under 2 minutes to play after Quentin Daly connected on a 3-point play. Daly had 26 points, and it was off the back of an MJ assist.
You got to love these 1984 scorelines, don't you? 134 to 127 in 2014. That's a quadruple overtime score.
I was going to go for triple OT, so you've bettered that by one. Jordan hit a couple of free throws late, which gave him his 29th and 30th point, but it was too little too late for Chicago. It was game over. The Blazers would hold on to win 141 to 131. What a fantastic scoreline, as you just mentioned. And the Bulls dropped to 8-7 on the early season. The Bulls had a 42-point fourth quarter, yet it still wasn't enough. Now for Chicago, 5 of the Bulls ended up in double-figure points. Jordan had 30, along with 6 boards and 8 assists. Quentin Daly finished with 26. Dave Corzine had a great game, 22 points on 9 of 14 from the field and 10 rebounds too, if you don't mind. Orlando Woolridge had 21 points and Steve Johnson had 18 points and 10 boards.
Again, when you have stat lines for that many players, MJ with 36 and 8, Quentin Daly 26, Corzine 20 and 10, double-double, no less. Orlando had 21, Steve Johnson 18 and 10. Again, in 2014, that's a 99% chance that you're going to win the game.
Yeah, that's right. So this is where Portland's incredible shooting came into effect. They had a record at that stage, a team record, 67% from the field, which is astonishing.
Extraordinary.
Yeah. Jim Paxson had 31 points. He hit on 14 of 18 field goals. For what it's worth, he's obviously John Paxson's brother, and their father, Jim, played in the late 50s. Kiki Vandeweghe had a fantastic game. He had 30 points. Clyde Drexler finished with 19, 6 assists and 3 rebounds. Great game there from the Glide. And Sam Bowie had 11 points, 6 boards and 2 assists in 27 minutes. So a good game there from Sam Bowie. One quote I'd like to make mention of is in an article which was titled, "Loss to Red Hot Blazers Fails to Burn the Bulls." So some good wordplay there. And this will be in the show notes to this episode, which you can find at inallairness.com/NB85-13. This is in relation to Sam Bowie. It says, Sam Bowie played for the first time in 2 weeks. There have been some second guesses in the media who suggested Portland should not have passed over Jordan for Bowie in the draft. Michael is a different type of player and Portland was looking for a centre, said Bowie. It was a business decision and not a question of who is the better player, me or Michael. Michael and I are good friends and he would say the same thing. He is a great athlete. Tonight I was pleased with my performance, but I still have a long way to go. Did you actually notice the little exchange that Jordan and Bowie had post-game, shaking hands?
I did indeed. Yeah, I noticed that. I also noticed the little newspaper clipping that you've included in the run sheet for today's episode. The article has a headshot of both MJ and Sam, and even in the photo, in the clipping, poor old Sam appears to be in pain.
Yeah, he does actually, doesn't he? He looks to be quite, in a bit of pain there. Not sure what I'm even saying. He does, mate. You're right.
Leave well enough alone.
That's true. So when they exchanged brief pleasantries after the game, it looked like Bowie wanted to hang around and talk for a bit, but Jordan pretty much brushed him off after a couple of quick words and then walked to the locker rooms. Not sure if there's anything really reading into that, but there you go.
I think that you're drawing along Bowie on that one, mate.
Michael might have been saying play it again, Sam. Who knows? Anyhow, let's move on, mate.
Chicago versus LA Clippers, November 30th, 1984.
This game took place at the Memorial Sports Arena in California in front of a crowd of 14,366. The LA Clippers were led by Jim Lynam, who after a 22-39 start was replaced with Don Chaney, who finished the season 9-12, just for what it's worth. And the coverage of this game, mate, that we've got on DVD is a Bulls TV, and it's Bill Hazen and Johnny Red Kerr.
Yeah, the LA Sports Arena in California was the original home of the Los Angeles Lakers after they moved from Minneapolis to California.
Indeed. Let's just go straight to the first quarter, mate. Marcus Johnson, who would score 8 points on 4 of 11 from the field and also had 8 rebounds and 4 assists. He hit the game's opening basket inside the first 15 seconds from the jump ball.
Marcus Johnson, a.k.a. Raymond from White Man Can't Jump.
Yeah, I wonder how many people actually are aware of some of the cameos that former players made in various movies, but yeah, particularly He was obviously in white men can't jump, so good stat there, mate. Jordan's first shot, I've got on my notes here, it's crazy. He hits a hanging double pump layup that immediately gets the crowd into the game, and fair to say it was one of the more outrageously entertaining moves of that entire game.
And I'll mention this later on as well, but I reckon that the atmosphere during this game was absolutely sensational. Just the atmosphere and the noise and the buzz of the crowd right throughout the game. It did help that it was a close game down the stretch as well, but I reckon that the atmosphere of the newly born LA Clippers and their crowd was excellent.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And speaking of atmosphere, mate, I might as well make mention of it at the moment where you're recording from. You've got raindrops not quite falling on your head, but they are falling on top of the car that you're currently sitting in.
They are. I can fix it very easily. 1 second.
Stop raining!
Okay.
Half a second later, had you said, stop raining, I would have snorted coffee through my nose. So that was very fortunate that you didn't say it a bit later.
You'll hear a bit of it still, but it'll stop some of it.
Derek Smith for the Clippers, who is a name that we'll be mentioning quite a lot in this recap, scored his first points on an alley-oop lob from Big Red, Bill Walton. Shortly thereafter, Walton got great position down low and then threw home a hammer dunk for an early 2-point Clippers lead. Jordan then, in another play, got the steal. In transition, he passed to Orlando Woolridge, and then Bill Hazen, and I won't even try and attempt to do an impression as good as yours. He says, here's Woolridge down the other end, kaboom, and the Bulls were back up in front by 2 points. Now, you can also tell that the Bulls players were worried about Bill Walton's presence down low. His career averages entering this season were 15.8 points, 12.1 boards, 4 assists and 2.5 blocks in only 32 minutes a game. And arguably the best of Bill Walton, physically at least, was well past at this stage, but he certainly was a definite presence down low. And of course, the following season would become a crucial guy off the bench for the Boston Celtics. Not long after this, Steve Johnson challenges Bill Walton at the hoop. Bill rejected him. Steve Johnson recovered the ball, then threw down another massive big-time flush. Derek Smith, who was posting up MJ on the block, gave a really great up fake, drew the foul on Jordan and made the basket, and then he hit the subsequent free throw, which gave Smith 7 points already in this first quarter.
My first exposure to Derek Smith, that doesn't sound very good, does it?
No.
Sorry. My first exposure to Derek Smith was when he was a member of the Boston Celtics during the 89-90 season, and he was absolutely fantastic in the first half of this game. It actually came quite unexpected to me just how good he was.
Yeah, he had a fantastic game here. There's no doubt about that. The next time down the floor, Smith hit a pretty baseline jumper, which gave him a very quick 9 points, and the Clippers regained the early seesawing lead. Orlando Woolridge was then trapped in the corner of the court. He split the double team with a great cross-court pass to Jordan, who then hit on a phenomenal layup. He was fouled by Norm Nixon, and the crowd were really buzzing at this stage, and this is one of the plays that I believe was shown on Come Fly With Me.
A crazy move. Norm Nixon did his best to wrap MJ up. Actually, MJ spun in the air. I'm not sure if it was his own momentum or Nixon's, but he ended up flipping up a one-handed shot over his head. It was a fantastic move.
It was beautiful to watch. And speaking of Nixon, he was a 2-time All-Star in 1982 and then also this 84-85 season. He averaged 17.2 points, almost 9 assists in 81 games with the Clippers during this season, and he was a 2-time NBA champion of the Lakers back in 1980 and 82. Now, during one of the ad breaks, mate, we were treated to one of the ads for the Chicago Bulls that they were running throughout this season, and they went with a tagline, Michael Jordan and the new Chicago Bulls, they're a whole new breed. And it just showed MJ pretty much on the practice court by himself, doing a strong drive to the hoop and then throwing down a monster dunk. So they were trying to promote the team as a whole new breed of player and team that they wanted to sort of pump up in the press, I guess, because they had been pretty lackluster in terms of attendance the years preceding.
I shared this ad, I think, on Facebook or on Twitter going back about 6 months ago. when I may or may not have first received some of these games on DVD and saw the ad, I thought it was really, really cool. So I put it out there on social media.
Yep. Later in this first quarter, Ennis Watley threw a really great pass to Steve Johnson, who hit another hammer dunk. Derek Smith was on fire in his first quarter for the Clippers. He got his points number 12 and 13 on a short putback bucket off the Bill Walton miss. Caldwell Jones then had a really nice dunk. He hit a nice, pretty up and under move around Bill Walton, and the Bulls extended to a 4-point lead. And I made note here as well that Caldwell was rather spry in his first quarter. He rejected the big man, 7'2", James Donaldson. And a random fact about Donaldson, for no apparent reason, he was born in the UK. But I think you might have mentioned that in a previous episode of the show, perhaps the 88 All-Star Game recap.
If anyone mentioned it, it was you. I don't think that I came out with that gem, but I also have a few useless facts on James Donaldson a bit later on in the episode.
Oh, very nice, mate. I do remember that you threw him under the bus in the 88 All-Star Game, so...
Yeah, and it's an unconfirmed report that may or may not be happening again.
Oh, my goodness. All right, I'll brace myself now and put the seatbelt on. Derek Smith completed a 3-point play, and then he would hit 2 more free throws, giving him 18 points for the quarter, which led to Bill Hazens. He's done everything but sell the popcorn here in Los Angeles, which I found to be quite a good line there from Bill. And in the final minutes of the quarter, MJ sat down, which gave the Clippers a chance to take a marginal lead. Then there was a really pretty play towards the end of the first with the aforementioned Marcus Johnson putting on a dribbling display. He had a great spin move around his defender in the backcourt. Then he completed the play with a really nice bounce pass to Harvey Catchings for a layup. Catchings is what he did with the assist too. He had 11 NBA seasons, and this would be his last. To end the first quarter, the Clippers were up 34-29.
Moving on to the second quarter, the Bulls started with the lineup of Watley, Daly, Higgins, Greenwood, and Corzine. There was a sweet Clipper fast break that was started by Norm Nixon, which resulted in a handoff to the aforementioned Harvey Catchings for a dunk on David Greenwood. I think you'd agree, Adam, that I made the observation that Dave Greenwood was virtually invisible during this game.
Yeah, it's rather a forgettable game for Greenwood, let's be honest.
And he, along with Woolridge and Reggie Theus, were the 3 marquee names for the Bulls in the seasons leading up to this one. Dave Greenwood averaged 12 points and 10 rebounds in the 1984 season, so he was no deal on the court. But before the 1985 season, he, as we've mentioned in previous episodes, held out before the season started in a contract dispute. His numbers after the holdout really fell away from his 84 season. His season stats fell to 6 points and 6 rebounds, and his minutes per game fell from 34 to 25. The holdout clearly didn't impress the Bulls much, considering he's dropping playing time after the holdout. And this was also his last season in Chicago before his career eventually fizzled away playing for 3 other teams, though he did win a ring at the end of the bench for the Pistons in 1990. His holdout plus his lack of production in this season made him my 1985 Bulls whipping boy, as I also wasn't very impressed.
And I might even just add at this stage, hello to David Greenwood, if you're listening.
Hello to Dave Greenwood, if you're listening. With 2:30 left in the second quarter, the score was 42-33 LA. To continue pushing people under the bus, also in the lineup for the Clippers was a guy I considered to be one of the worst All-Stars in history. This is something that I've mentioned in a previous In Awareness podcast, Adam, which you also mentioned before. James Donaldson made the West squad in 1988 after Steve Johnson, who just so happened to be a member of this 85 Bull squad. He couldn't play in the game due to injury as a member of the Portland Trailblazers. James Donaldson's numbers that season were a modest 7 points and 6 rebounds per game. And in my opinion, he ranks right up there with Mo Williams as the 2 members of the anti-All-Star team. He did, however, look the size of a tree on the court during this game. He looked a foot taller than everyone else and also used his size quite well down low to bully the Bulls front line around the hoop.
So you initially threw Donaldson under the bus. Now you're trying to actually hop into the driver's seat and back it up a little bit.
And reverse over him. Just, Adam, I get paid. Well, actually, I don't get paid, but I'm here. I'm here to tell it as I see it, mate.
You're slaving away, and you're currently recording inside your car.
In my car.
At my behest, due to trying to get the best audio that we can. So I won't say anything further, mate. You're doing a great job.
I made an observation also, Adam, that Rod Higgins for the Bulls was quite known as an outside shooter at this point in time of his career, which was news to me.
Well, yeah, I'd agree. That's news to me as well.
One of the great NBA names. Actually, we should do a podcast about the great NBA names, but
certainly
one of them, Junior Bridgman.
Yep.
And top 10 draft choice Lancaster Gordon were in the game for LA. I was going to elaborate on who Bridgman was, as I wanted to know myself and to inform our listeners, but I've noticed that you've done the same a little later on. Like a good teammate, I'll box out and let you grab the rebound.
Very admirable. Thank you, mate. I appreciate it.
During this quarter, the commentators spoke about the Clippers' 2 draft picks, Lancaster Gordon and Michael Cage from the 84 draft, weren't playing very well for LA early on in this season. Lancaster Gordon was shooting 29% from the field and averaging 2.9 points per game. And during this game, Michael Cage's first shot was a runner over 3 Bulls players that bounced off the top of the backboard.
Fair to say they weren't off to a great start, but Gordon was struggling a little bit from the field. 29% field goal percentage is not ideal as you enter the first month of the NBA season.
A 29% field goal percentage in 2014 would be about 3.5%. It was a 49-36 LA Clippers lead off an MJ 17-foot jump shot. Dave Corzine, who had been in double figures in the previous 3 games for the Bulls, hit a long 2 from the top of the key and then backed it up with the following possession from the foul line.
We haven't mentioned Dave Corzine's name for at least probably 15 minutes of airtime, mate, so gladly we got to mention him just now.
Junior Bridgman was actually playing on MJ during this third quarter, which Bill Hazen called a quality matchup, which opened my eyes a little bit.
He gave out some great comments, really, didn't he? Throughout these games that we've got from early in Jordan's career, he didn't mind saying some interesting things, and also he came out with some fantastic catch cries too. That's
a very interesting point.
It is.
During their second quarter, Michael Jordan and Derek Smith traded jumpers. Derek Smith continued his hot shooting to give him 20 points. He was really... What are you doing?
I'm just frightened if I turn the camera on.
Where the hell did that come from?
Sorry.
During the second period, Jordan and Derek Smith were trading jumpers. Smith continued his hot shooting to give him 20 points. He was really carving MJ up when MJ was defending him.
When you say they were trading jumpers, because it was winter over there, were they like exchanging actual woolen jumpers pre-game or?
I'm sure that the term jumpers when referring to clothing means nothing to 3/4 of our listeners.
Sorry about that. Keep going while I derail the whole podcast.
Late in the second quarter, Orlando finished off the quarter strongly for Chicago with a massive dunk off the break. The ball actually hit the back of the rim as he dunked it, but he had so much on the dunk that it went down the pipe anyway.
We've talked about it often throughout this series, but how great of an athlete and a physical presence was this guy? Like, seriously, great to watch at the height of his athletic prowess.
Just from our research and watching the games from this season, I've actually become very fond of Orlando as a player, and it pushed me to spend some of my hard-earned on Orlando Woolridge autographed game used sneaker, which actually turned up in the mail yesterday. So I was very happy to get that. But yeah, he was an absolute beast on the court.
Great fun to watch. So the teams went into the halftime break 64-61. The Clippers had a 3-point advantage. Now in the halftime ceremony, John Wooden, the UCLA and all-around basketball great, 10-time NCAA championship coach, if you don't mind, was on hand to present the John Wooden Award for the most outstanding college player to Michael Jordan. Are you wanting to say something, mate? Or
Is that an exclamation point in brackets?
Yes. Yeah, because I'm so stunned that he won 10 NCAA titles.
A huge achievement, almost as huge as you using exclamation point in brackets. That's impressive.
Yeah, I was stunned. So that's why it entered into our working document, mate, that we're both referring to at the moment. And the first ever recipient of this John Wooden Award in 1977 was Marcus Johnson, who coincidentally was playing with the Clippers at this stage, and he took part in this presentation as well.
This presentation featured on Come Fly With Me, and it stated that with a schedule so hectic that Jordan had to wait for this Bulls West Coast road swing to pick up the College Player of the Year award. And I was quite pleasantly surprised when I saw this come up at halftime, as I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah, it's a nice little addition to actually have that included in the telecast.
Nice little tidbit was that Marcus Johnson actually provided his own personal wooden award trophy for the ceremony.
I think he might have just carried that with him from game to game, perhaps.
I would.
Who wouldn't?
Wouldn't.
That was better than I thought.
Thanks, Beavis.
Yeah, that's right. All right, shut up, butthead. Now, let's move on. In the third quarter, mate, Caldwell Jones connected on the first score of the second half. He hit a baseline jumper off the MJ assist. Why have I said the scores are the same as what they were at the half? Anyhow, moving on. Now, the game stopped briefly on the next play when Rory White of the Clippers was rejected at the rim by two Bulls. He landed awkwardly and then was attended to by trainers. MJ hit a 17-footer, which gave him 12 points for the game, and the Bulls attempted to cut the deficit. Norm Nixon also caught fire early in this third quarter, and he took his points tally to 13, as the Clippers actually extended to a 5-point lead. And Derek Smith at this stage was having some kind of game. He took a charge on MJ down on the baseline and really had the Bulls wrapped around his little finger at this stage. He had a fantastic game. Caldwell Jones then fouled Bill Walton, who was left open near the basket. Jones, a precursor to future Bulls favourite Bill Cartwright perhaps, delivered the inadvertent elbow to the face of his own teammate, Steve Johnson. Bill Hazen then mentioned that Jones broke the nose of Steve Stepanovich of the Indiana Pacers in a previous matchup not long past.
Is that the matchup against the Pacers in which they both got ejected from?
There's every chance it would be, actually, yeah, because we covered that in a previous episode where they were in a bit of a fracas of sorts. Good thinking. Now, Derek Smith hit a long jumper, which gave him 25 points, and the Clippers were out to a 6-point lead. With MJ on the bench, the Clippers tried to increase their advantage. They crashed the boards multiple times before the big redhead Bill Walton jammed home a follow dunk, which gave him 9 points. And then he really fired up the crowd as he ran back down the court. He was flailing his arms around.
Just one observation on Bill Walton. If you look at that halftime presentation in which Walton's college coach, John Wooden, was present, how chuffed was Bill Walton to be again in the presence of his college coach?
Yeah, they crossed him a few times with one of the camera angles and he had an absolute beaming smile on his face.
Yeah.
Just reveling in the moment, and you could just see him so happy for John Wooden. And also Marcus Johnson, if I'm not mistaken, also played for Coach Wooden at UCLA.
That is correct.
Not to mention the fact that this game is in California, of course. So the crowd really, they even stood up and gave Wooden a standing O. Well, as most people do when you stand up, you give a standing O. But that was also worth noting as well, that Wooden received an extended ovation from the crowd.
A standing ovation? Well, why wouldn't they? One other thing to mention about the halftime presentation was, of course, the fact that MJ had only just recently played in LA for Team USA in the Olympics, and he made mention of the fact that he was happy to be back in LA and got a really nice cheer from the other crowd. So there was a bit of residual love there from the home crowd from the LA Olympics as well.
At this stage, the Bulls were out of sync and they called timeout with about 5 minutes remaining in the third quarter. As you mentioned earlier, mate, Junior Bridgman, he scored 7 points on 3 of 8 from the field in this particular contest. He's a 12-year NBA veteran and he actually amassed over 11,000 career points in the NBA, and arguably has to be one of the NBA's most successful players ever post-retirement. Aside from the impressive playing career, he is the owner of almost 200 Wendy's fast food chains, and then he's also involved in many other businesses. So it's fair to say he was a franchise player once he retired.
At the end of this series, we will be having an all tidbit team, and that will undoubtedly make that first team, mate. That was a ripper. Absolute ripper. A nice cherry on the Wendy Sunday, you might like to say.
I'm trying to think of something else as I sort of try and put down the fact that we're making these silly jokes, but can't think of anything.
One thing that you can't say about Bridgman, that he definitely wasn't a Wendy's hot dog on the court.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, I've got nowhere to go from that, so let's just get back to the game, perhaps. Michael Cage hit his only field goal in this third quarter. He was 1 of 3 from the field. He only had 1 board and 1 assist. In this 84-85 season, he averaged 7.1 points and 5.2 rebounds in 21 minutes per contest.
And I mentioned before that the Cage really wasn't that great in his rookie season. He obviously came a very long way, though.
Oh, for sure. He was a physical specimen, too, in terms of his build. So he obviously had all the tools required to be able to achieve success at the highest level, and that certainly came on as the years progressed in his career. Steve Johnson then scored a tip-in which tied the game at 79 apiece. Lancaster Gordon, as you mentioned, was also in this game. He was picked up in the 84 draft by the Clippers at pick number 8. Now, in episode 25 of the In Orlandis podcast, inorlandis.com/25, we did a full breakdown of the 84 draft. Gordon scored 4 points in this particular game. In
just 2 made baskets, he beat his season average.
Yeah, that's true, which was, 2.9 you said at that stage, didn't you?
2.9.
Now, there's a pretty wild finish to the third. Jordan drove to the middle of the key, then lost the ball. Lancaster Gordon recovered it. He threw a pass straight to the Bulls' Quinton Daly, who then subsequently launched a 46-foot bomb that almost banked home off the glass as the buzzer sounded. So that was an enjoyable little sequence in the final seconds. The Bulls outscored the Clippers 23-17 in the third quarter, and then they regained the ascendancy. They were up 84-81.
I wouldn't have been at all surprised if you had said that Quinton Daly launched a 46-foot bomb with 20 seconds left on the shot clock.
Yeah, that's true. He was obviously prone to jack up a few shots from long range without much forethought.
Speaking of Jack Nicholson was on hand for this game. He evidently decided to catch the Air Jordan show, I guess.
I think he was actually seated. He was seated. Yeah, okay. Yeah, creating new words. He was seated even 2 or 3 seats down from the end of the Bulls bench, hoping for a call-up from Kevin Lockery perhaps in the waning moments. I'm not sure.
MJ's first score of the final quarter came about 2 minutes in on a jumper from the top of the key to put Chicago up 86-83. Kevin Lockery put the ball into Michael's hands to start the fourth quarter and orchestrate the offense as they started a backcourt of Jordan and Quinton Daly. I mentioned it before, but you could really hear the atmosphere in the building was quite electric. The crowd was really into the game as it was a close game right to the final buzzer. With 4 minutes left, the Bulls were up 95-93 as Orlando Warriors made 1 of 2 at the line. Both teams really had the opportunity to pull away down the stretch, but were both having a lot of trouble just putting the ball in the hoop, is putting it simply. A Rory White 3-point play put the Clips up by 1 with 3:10 left in the ball game. The very next play, the lead was extended to 3 after a Bill Walton block on Steve Johnson at the rim. This then turned into a really cool dunk by Derek Smith at the other end. As he went up for the dunk, Jordan was flying by to challenge the shot, so Smith took it up on the other side of the hoop for the finish to give him 33 points at this point.
It was great to actually see Derek Smith go off and have such a banner game. And unfortunately, in the closing moments, he'll be remembered for one particular play, which we'll get to shortly.
With 3:02 left in the game, Caldwell Jones brought it back to a 1-point lead for the Clippers on an offensive rebound and a short jump shot in the lane. On the next possession, Norm Nixon stuck a 20-footer right in MJ's face to take it back out to 3 points. A little bit later on, MJ tied the game at 100 with a baseline jumper after a defensive stop for the Bulls. and the crowd were really buzzing at this point. It was a very exciting game to watch. The Clippers called for time after the score was tied on the Jordan jumper. With 1:26 left, the Bulls came up with another great defensive stop as MJ rushed Norm Nixon into a really tough 18-footer. Jordan played Norm Nixon really well down the stretch on the defensive end. What followed was a Bulls rebound, and then the play of the game and some of the more extraordinary commentary that I've ever heard.
Just before we get going here, mate, all right, I've just had to strap my seatbelt on and make sure it's buckled in. So go ahead.
I'll just pull the microphone away from my mouth a little bit. Michael driving all the way in. Oh, what a shot! Unbelievable! He's put it in an account. Can you believe that?
I love the fact that you had the foresight to remove the earbuds, take the microphone a little bit further away from yourself to then come out with full Bill Hazen. Well played.
I am sitting in my car, but I am a professional.
That was great.
On this play, MJ caught the ball at half court. Listeners, bear with me for the next half an hour as I describe this move. He caught the ball at half court, took 3 dribbles, drove across the lane with only Derek Smith back, jumped, had Derek Smith all over him, who originally went for the block, realized he couldn't block it. Then he tried to corral MJ by wrapping him up with both arms outstretched, only to have MJ float across the lane, use his right wrist to flick the ball up to the backboard as he's falling down, moving away from the hoop, no less, and has it kiss off the top of the backboard and go through the hoop to put the Bulls up 3 and to give him 20 points after the extra free throw. Tongue on full display the entire time.
It was one of the most remarkable shots of Jordan's career. In our previous episode 12, I also read out a description of the move from a Chicago paper, and that was a great little description as well. So definitely worth making mention of again, mate.
It was such a massive play, not only with the level of difficulty on the shot, but the timing of it as well. It was a really nip and tuck affair going down the other stretch at the LA Sports Arena. And for MJ to pull out that move was just absolutely extraordinary. And you could just hear the excitement in mine and Bill Hazen's voice as I was describing the other piece of commentary. It was just absolutely extraordinary.
And the crowd as well reacted like it was a Bulls home game and they were at the stadium. So that was even as remarkable, the fact that they absolutely just ate up the entire move, because it really effectively kept Chicago not only in the game, but put them ahead to the point where then they could virtually secure the lead and hold on to the win. But still, the Clippers fans reacted like they'd almost won the championship.
Those of us who have been fortunate enough to see the broadcast of the game are also treated with 37 replays of the shot as well. So absolutely fantastic.
I'm glad that in this instance it was the Bulls coverage, because if it was a Clippers coverage, we probably would have seen it once or twice and then they probably would have moved on to something else. Maybe a still of the John Wooden trophy. Keep going, mate. That was unnecessary by me. Unnecessary, but anyhow, move on.
During the ensuing Clippers timeout, microphones caught audio of Kevin Lockery in the huddle telling his troops to have the Clippers milk some clock after they inbound the ball, but then foul them at half court. And then he also repeated this 3 or 4 times. Foul them, foul them, foul them.
You beat me to it because I was going to say, he repeated this 3 or 4 times. He repeated this 3 or 4 times, and I was going to say it 3 or 4 times. Anyhow.
Then as the ball was inbounded, MJ actually appeared to cleanly strip the ball away and steal the ball, but was called for a foul. But I guess in that he did actually succeed what Kevin Lockery asked him to do in fouling them at half court. So that was successful. Then as the Clippers inbounded the ball again, MJ actually stole the ball, and with 25 seconds left on the clock, all the Clippers had to do was foul Chicago to put them at the line and stop the clock. But in an amazing turn of events. The Bulls played keepers off for 24 seconds to run out the clock and win the game.
I just couldn't believe it when I saw this the first time. What are they doing? Surely Jim Lynham is virtually doing cartwheels on the sideline trying to tell his players to foul. But for whatever reason, they got close and looked like the players could have fouled any of the Bulls that had the ball at one stage. But then in the last 10 or so seconds, they pretty much just were resigned to the fact they were going to lose and then just almost played half D to just let it all happen. Yeah, strange.
Extraordinary. And even the other commentators were, I think, a bit blown away about the fact that the Clippers didn't foul them.
A strange ending to the ball game, but the Bulls would hang on to then win by 4 points. It was 104-100, and they moved to 9-9 on the season, so they were back to a 500 record.
It was quite a strange completion to the game. It was a really close contest going down the stretch, and then it was a bit anticlimactic almost, the way that it finished off.
You'd almost suggest that the game effectively ended when Jordan dismantled the Clippers with that incredible three-point play. And then from there onwards, even though the Clippers had their opportunities, they just didn't make the most of them at home. And then the Bulls just hung on to have the 4-point win. Yeah, strange end, mate. This was the Clippers' 10th loss in 13 games, and it was Chicago's 3rd game in 4 days. So they would have been very happy to get away with the victory. And, of course, Jordan had to step up and do something Herculean. Tell you what, my vocabulary is getting better every episode. Had to do something Herculean to keep the Bulls ahead and get the narrow victory. For the Bulls, Orlando Woolridge was the top scorer. He had 23 points along with 6 rebounds. Jordan went for 20 points, 5 boards and 5 assists on 9 of 15 from the field. Caldwell Jones had a double-double, so that was good to see, 11 points and 10 boards. For the clip show, Derek Smith had 33 points on 12 of 17 from the field. Norm Nixon had 17 points and 6 assists. Bill Walton had 11 points and 8 boards. And Marcus Johnson had 1 John Wooden trophy. I don't even know why I said that. Now, a quick mention. The Chicago Tribune on December the 1st had a good article which was entitled Jordan Rescues Bulls, Desperate Shot Stuns Clippers. It's a great article which I will include in the show notes of this episode, which will be found at inallernis.com/NB85-13. To close out the article, it says, in the absence of the usual Michael Jordan Meet the Press show that accompanies his first visit to an NBA city, the LA press descended on him in the locker room afterwards. As always, Jordan patiently answered every question as if he hadn't heard it before. I thought that was a relevant tidbit to make mention of as well.
Do you recall in the Hoop magazine back in the early 90s, maybe also the late 80s, that he was always a member of the all-interview team?
Yeah, I do. And
yeah.
As you get to like 1993, probably really post-first retirement, 96, 97, not so much. He pretty much didn't give a whole lot, seemingly on the outside looking in, to the reporters at that stage. He was just obviously a veteran who was the most recognisable athlete in the world, of course, and the greatest probably of all time, arguably. So fair to say he shied away a little bit from wanting to be front and centre. He left that up to Charles Barkley and co. The all-interview team, that is.
Thank you.
He just stared at me like a stunned mullet, so I thought I'd better put it into perspective.
Thank you for straightening that out for me.
All right, mate. Well, that was another good week. I thought about it for a few seconds about where we're going to go from here. Anyhow, I'll just hand it over to you. Is there anything that you'd like to say before we finish this episode, Aaron Steen?
Adam, it's been a lot of fun doing a podcast based on the Windy City, Rip City, and the city of Giddy Up.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show and share my web address with your friends and colleagues, inallernis.com. Check out the podcast archive for plenty more episodes with high-profile guests. Follow me on Twitter at inallernis. Please add your like to the show's social hub, facebook.com/inallernis. Join me next time for another edition of the show.